The screen glows in the darkness, a familiar, harsh light that seems to vibrate with its own anxious energy. It's 5:02 a.m. on a Monday in late October 2025. The air in this Seattle apartment is still and carries the faint, stale scent of last night's takeout Thai curry, I think. My name is Marcus, and this is not the triumphant, quiet morning you see in the videos. My first conscious thought of the day isn't about my dreams or gratitude or the sunrise. It's a physical jolt. A deep, primal ping of panic that shoots from my chest to my fingertips. I don't even know why yet. My body just knows the phone is there on the nightstand 3 inches from my head. Its screen is lighting up the room with a bluish, clinical glow, catching the dust particles that float like tiny worlds in the dark. I don't choose to reach for it. My hand moves on its own, a reflex perfected over a decade. The cool glass of the screen meets my warm palm. My thumb finds the fingerprint sensor. Click, and the wave hits. 17 new emails since 11 p.m. 4 Slack messages from Sandra on the East Coast, who's already been working for 2 hours. A calendar notification reminding me my quarterly review is in, oh God, 3 days. 3 text messages. And the little red bubble on Instagram screams 32. Someone's story has 32 new replies. My heart, still sluggish from sleep, kicks into a frantic, uneven rhythm. It feels like a trapped bird fluttering against my ribs. My mouth is dry, cottony. This is how my day begins. Every day. Not with a breath, but with a blast of someone else's agenda. I shuffle to the kitchen, the phone still fused to my hand. The floorboards are cold under my bare feet. I tap open the first work email with one hand while I fumble for the coffee pod with the other. The subject line, urgent client revision. My stomach tightens. I haven't had a single sip of water, but my body is already flooded with cortisol, the stress chemical. I can feel it, a metallic taste in my mouth, a slight tremble in my fingers as I miss the coffee machine slot twice. While the machine gurgles, I open Instagram. A scroll through a blur of polished kitchen corners. Someone's perfect avocado toast, a meme about burnout that's a little too relatable. A notification pops up. Your screen time is up 12% this week. I dismiss it. The irony doesn't even land. By 5:17 a.m., I'm perched on my apartment's small balcony, overlooking the damp, empty streets of Queen Anne. The air is crisp and smells like rain and distant salt water from the Puget Sound. It could be beautiful. It should be peaceful, but I don't taste my coffee. I don't hear the early morning chatter of the crows in the big maple tree. My brain is already 5 miles away in a downtown conference room, rehearsing a presentation on not giving until Thursday. This was my routine for 1,743 days straight. I know because my phone screen time tracker told me so. A report card of my own distraction. I was a 32-year-old project manager for a green tech startup, and by all external measures I was doing okay. But inside, I felt like I was running on a never-ending escalator that was speeding up, and I was constantly 2 steps from tumbling backwards. The worst part wasn't the fatigue. It was the quiet, nagging voice that started whispering around 3 p.m. every day. Is this it? Is this just what being a grown-up feels like? A constant low-grade dread of my own inbox. A feeling that my best thoughts, my real thoughts, were buried under an avalanche of notifications and other people's urgent priorities. I remember one specific morning, clear as a photograph. It was November 12th, rain streaked the balcony glass. I was scrolling through LinkedIn and I saw a post from a former colleague. She'd gotten a promotion, a big one. And instead of feeling happy for her, I felt a hot spike of pure anxiety. My immediate gut reaction was to check my own email, as if my worth might be hiding in there, waiting to be discovered. In that moment, holding my lukewarm coffee, watching the rain, I asked myself a question that finally stuck. It wasn't a gentle self-help question. It was uncomfortable. It stung. What if the first hour of your day doesn't actually belong to you? Think about that for a second. Not in a philosophical way, but in a practical, gritty, real-world way. From the moment my eyes fluttered open to the moment I walked into my first meeting, my mind was a public square. Everyone was shouting there, my boss, my clients, random influencers, news algorithms, friends with memes. My own voice, the one that knew what I actually cared about, was the quietest one in the room. It couldn't get a word in. I believed a lie. A lie that sounds like hustle culture but feels like hell. I believed that being on from minute one made me valuable, that immediate responsiveness was the same thing as competence, that if I wasn't consuming information, I was falling behind. So I fed the beast. Every ping, every notification was a little pellet of, "You're needed," and I was the rat tapping the lever again and again before the sun even came up. But here's the crazy thing the data shows now, in 2025. A study from UCSD found that people who check their phone within 5 minutes of waking have cortisol levels that stay elevated by 28% for the next 4 hours. You're literally programming your nervous system for stress before your feet hit the floor. You're starting your day in a state of emergency. For what? A meme, a pulse fix email, an ad for socks. I didn't know that fact back then on that rainy balcony, but I felt it in my bones. I felt the cheap, jittery energy of it, the emptiness that followed the brief hit of something new. So I sat there, the city slowly waking up below me, the gray light getting stronger. What if there was a way to pay a different kind of cost, one that actually gave you something back, instead of just taking pieces of you away, day by day, notification by notification? But first, I had to understand the invisible trap I'd been living in my entire adult life. Do not touch your phone until you are holding a warm drink in your hands and have looked out a window for 1 full minute. Asterisk, asterisk, that's it. That was the entire plan. It sounded so stupidly simple I was almost embarrassed by it. The battle began the night before. I bought a little timed kitchen safe from Amazon, a plastic box with a digital timer on the lid. It cost $39.99. I didn't sleep well. My sleep was shallow, filled with weird, anxious dreams about missing alarms and urgent, phantom vibrations in my chest. When my old basic alarm clock blared at 5:30 a.m., the sound was shockingly raw and mechanical without the gentle glow of my phone screen to soften the wake-up. The room was pitch black and silent in a way that felt heavy. My body literally started to sit up, muscles tensing to go to the closet. This wasn't a thought, it was a reflex deep in my lizard brain. I forced myself to lie back down. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. That I was missing critical data for survival. It felt like I'd left a baby crying in another room. I swung my feet out of bed. The wooden floor was freezing, a shock that traveled up my spine. This right here is the exact moment. This is the split in the road. This feeling of itchy, anxious, empty uncertainty in your own kitchen at 5:42 a.m. This is where 95% of people quit. They decide the discomfort is a sign they're doing something wrong. They go get the phone. They silence the screaming anxiety with the digital pacifier, and the cycle locks back into place tighter than before. But if you're standing there, feeling that awful pull and you don't move, if you just watch the flame and listen to the quiet hum of the house and feel your own heartbeat slowly begin to calm down, congratulations. You're in the 5% now.
The kettle began to whistle, a low, steady scream that broke the silence. I poured the steaming water over a tea bag in my favorite mug, the thick, heavy one from a camping trip. The smell of chamomile bloomed in the air, sweet and grassy. I carried the mug to my small balcony door. I slid it open. A rush of cold, damp December air washed over me, smelling of wet earth and pine from the trees nearby. I stood there, in my sweatpants and t-shirt, and I looked out. I set a mental timer for 1 minute. I forced myself to actually see. I saw the dark outlines of the houses on Queen Anne Hill, little squares of warm yellow light in a few windows. I saw a single car's headlights moving slowly down the street, its engine a distant purr. I saw the silhouette of a big old cedar tree against the slightly less dark sky. I saw my own faint reflection in the glass, holding a mug. I took a sip of the tea, and I actually tasted it. I felt the heat travel down my throat and spread warmly in my stomach. I felt the porcelain, rough where a tiny chip was, smooth everywhere else. The minute felt like an eternity. My mind tried to wander to work, to emails, to that thing I forgot to do yesterday. I gently pulled it back. Just look, just breathe, just drink your tea. And then something tiny and miraculous happened. Nothing. The world didn't end. No emergencies were missed. The sky didn't fall. The anxious knot in my stomach, which had been clenched like a fist, began to relax. Just a little. The magnetic pull toward the closet faded from a scream to a whisper. When I finally walked to the linen closet at 7:01 a.m. after the timer had beeped, it felt different. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't craving. There was a strange sense of ceremony to it. I took the box down, opened the lid, and picked up my phone. It felt foreign in my hand, cool heavy, just an object. I turned it on. Notifications flooded in. The numbers popped up. But the feeling was different. It was like watching weather through a window instead of being out in the storm. I scanned the list. There was no emergency. There was just the world waiting for me. And for the first time, I felt like I had chosen when to meet it, instead of it ambushing me the moment I opened my eyes. That was the microscopic victory. It wasn't that I had a profoundly spiritual morning. I didn't have a vision or a brilliant idea. The victory was that I experienced my own presence without an intermediary for about 20 minutes. I felt the cold floor. I tasted the tea. I saw the dawn. My senses came online before my inbox did. Stanford researchers have a term for this. They call it cognitive priming. In 2024, they found that just 72 hours of what they call notification fasting, deliberately delaying your engagement with digital alerts, can regenerate your attention span by an average of 31%. You're not just avoiding stress. You're literally healing your brain's ability to focus. My 20 minutes was the first deposit in that bank. That morning I went to work feeling oddly calm. The usual traffic on the I-5 didn't spike my anger. The barrage of morning slacks felt manageable. I had created a tiny buffer of peace, and it protected me for hours. It was proof. Not proof that I was now a morning guru, but proof that the first tug on the string could be resisted. The marionette could pause. One quiet morning doesn't change a life. It's a crack in the dam, that's all. But a crack is how the light gets in, and once you've seen that light, felt that small taste of your own autonomy, a question naturally forms. You've proven you can survive the first few minutes, but what if you could do more than just survive? What if you could actually build something in that quiet space? What happens when you stack 7 mornings like that? And then 30. Day 8. That was the first real test. The novelty of the lockbox had worn off. The initial win felt small and distant. My alarm blared at 5 a.m., and my first gut-level thought was, "This is stupid, I'm tired, just sleep." The cozy warmth of my blankets was a powerful, magnetic force. The dark room whispered that nothing mattered, that my little experiment was pointless. This is the daily war. It's not fought on the first day, when motivation is high. It's fought on the 8th day, the 12th, the 30th. It has fought in that murky space between wanting a better life and wanting 9 more minutes of sleep. But I had made a promise to myself. Not a grand, life-changing vow, but a tiny contract. I told myself I would stick to this for 1 week, just to see. So on day 8, I groaned, I cursed, but I swung my feet out onto that cold floor. The battle was already half won. I'd learned that don't touch your phone was just step 0. To fill the space I'd created, I needed structure, not a rigid punishing schedule, but a simple sequence, a flow. I'd cobbled it together from research and failure, and by January of 2026, it had become my anchor. I called it the 5 a.m. protocol. It wasn't complicated. It had 5 parts, each 15 minutes or less. First, hydration before information. I'd walk straight to the kitchen and pour myself a huge 20-ounce glass of water. I'd drop in a little electrolyte powder, the citrus flavor that made it taste like a mild, healthy soda. I'd stand at the counter, in the silence, and drink the whole thing. No thinking, just drinking. Feeling the cool liquid travel down, waking up my organs from the inside out. The rule was absolute. No other activity until the glass was empty. It was a physical reboot. Second, the cold shock. This was the hardest part, every single time. At 5:15, I'd walk into my bathroom. I'd turn the shower knob all the way to cold. The pipes would shudder and groan. I'd stare at the stream, my brain screaming a list of perfect excuses. You have a slight sniffle. You didn't sleep well. You can skip it just today. I'd take a deep breath, step in, and for 90 seconds, I'd just breathe through the shock. The water felt like 1,000 icy needles. My breath would come in sharp gasps. But then, something magical would happen. My body would stop fighting. The gasps would turn into deep, steady breaths. And when I stepped out, toweled off, my skin tingling and pink, I felt truly, vibrantly awake. A 2024 study from UC San Francisco found this exact practice can boost dopamine, that motivation chemical, by over 250% for several hours. I wasn't just showering. I was lighting a fire in my own brain. Third, the brain dump. At 5:35, still damp, I'd sit at my small desk with a cheap, spiral-bound notebook. I'd set a timer for 15 minutes. The instruction was simple. Write 3 pages of anything. No editing, no judging. If all I could think was, I hate this, I'm tired, this is dumb, I'd write that over and over. It was like taking out the mental trash. By the second page, the complaints would often give way to something else. A worry about a project, a half-formed idea, a memory of my dad. It wasn't pretty writing. It was messy, scribbled, cathartic. The pen scratching on paper was the only sound. Fourth, intentional learning. At 6 a.m., I'd pick up a physical book. Not an audiobook while I checked email, not an article on my phone, a real paper book. That winter, I was slowly working through a biography of a ship captain. For 15 minutes I'd just read. I'd feel the weight of the pages, smell the faint dusty paper smell. If my mind wandered, I'd gently guide it back to the words. This was training for a muscle I'd forgotten I had. Sustained, focused attention. Fifth, sunrise and movement. Finally, at 6:15, I'd throw on a hoodie and sneakers and go outside, even in the drizzly Seattle dark. I'd walk around the block. No podcast, no music, just me, the sound of my footsteps, and the slowly lightening sky. I'd look for the morning star, usually Venus, watch house lights flick on in windows. Then I'd come back and do 5 minutes of simple stretches, touching my toes, rolling my shoulders. It wasn't a workout. It was a reunion with my own body. That was the protocol. It took exactly 1 hour. But the magic wasn't in any single step. It was in the chain. Each small action built on the last, creating a momentum of my own choosing. Of course, I failed. Often. There was the Wednesday in mid-January when I had a terrible head cold. I slept until 6:30. The old voice of shame started up immediately. You blew it. The streak is broken. You might as well quit. But I had learned a crucial lesson. The protocol wasn't about perfection. It was about the reset. So, at 6:30, sick and groggy, I did a compressed version. I drank the big glass of water. I wrote for 5 messy minutes. I sat by the window for 10. It wasn't the perfect hour, but it preserved the principle. I had shown up for myself, even in the mess. That was a bigger victory than any perfect streak. To see my progress, I kept 2 simple trackers. On my wall calendar, I put a small green X for every day I completed the core ritual, even the compressed ones. Seeing a chain of green X's grow was viscerally satisfying. More powerful, though, was my phone's own screen time report. Every Sunday, I'd check. In early December, my social and productivity app usage in the 5-7 a.m. time slot was 57 minutes. By late January, it was 4 minutes. 4. The graph didn't lie. I had reclaimed nearly an hour of my own mind every single day. But doing it alone was hard. The isolation almost got me in February. It felt weird, like I was a secret agent living a double life. That S, when I reached out to my friend Leo in Austin and my cousin Maya in Portland. I told them what I was doing, not in a preachy way, but in a, hey, I'm trying this weird thing way. To my surprise, they were curious. We formed a tiny 3-person accountability pod, not a big social media group, just a signal chat called Sunrise Club. Every morning by 7 a.m., we'd each send a 1-word message, clear. That was it. No details, no pressure, just a digital nod across the miles. On mornings, I wanted to quit, knowing Leo and Maya were probably drinking their water or facing their own cold shower made all the difference. We weren't alone in the war. The transformation wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a time lapse. If you could have put 2 videos side by side. Marcus, December 1st, 5:05 a.m. Face lit by blue glow, eyes wide with anxious scanning, shoulders hunched, one hand scrolling, the other gripping cold coffee. Marcus, March 1st, 5:05 am. Standing at the counter, both hands around a big glass of water, looking out the window at the dark, shoulders relaxed, face calm. Same guy, same kitchen, entirely different universe. I started noticing strange, new things. I could actually hear the complete song of the birds outside, not just fragments between notifications. I began to recognize my neighbors' faces on their early walks and would share a nod. My morning coffee, which I now made after the protocol, tasted richer, deeper. I'd actually smell the beans as I ground them. My work didn't start with a panicked reaction. It began with a chosen, focused action. I had built a buffer of calm between me and the world, and it withstood the daily storms. The data is clear on this. People who stick with a morning anchoring ritual like this gain back an average of 11.2 hours of focused time per week. That's not just empty time. That's the deep, creative, strategic time that actually moves your life forward. Over a year, it's like getting a 90-day sabbatical. But here's the thing no one tells you. When this becomes your normal, when the war feels mostly won and the routine feels easy, that's when a new, subtler challenge appears. You've climbed the first mountain. You're standing on the peak, breathing the clean air. And you look out, and you see the next taller range of mountains in the distance. The questions change from, can I do this, to, what is this for? What do I build with this quiet, powerful time I've won back? The peace isn't an end point, it's a launching pad, and that is the most exciting, and sometimes the most terrifying, part of the journey. It's May 15th, 2026, 5:05 a.m. The sky over Seattle is a soft watercolor blend of indigo and the faintest peach. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm standing on my balcony, my hands wrapped around a mug of peppermint tea, watching a single seaplane make its quiet, steady way across the Sound towards Lake Union. The air smells like blooming lilacs and damp earth. My breath is even. My mind is clear. Not empty, but spacious, like a clean room with a single window open to the morning. This is my new normal. It feels as natural as breathing. But let's be clear. This wasn't a magic trick that just made me feel better. The changes were concrete, tangible things I could point to on a spreadsheet or a calendar. The first tangible win happened at work. For 3 years, my team had struggled with a clunky, twice-weekly reporting process. It ate up hours, and everyone hated it. One morning in March, during my brain dump journaling time, a complete solution just fell out of my pen. A simple automation using a tool we already had. It wasn't a stressful late-night breakthrough. It came from a place of quiet focus. I proposed it in a meeting. My boss looked at me, surprised, and said, "That's brilliant in its simplicity. We implemented it." The team got back 12 collective hours a week. In my July review, I wasn't praised for being the first one online. I was praised for being the one who solved the problem. The promotion and raise that followed weren't just about money. They were validation that depth trumps reactivity every time. Then there were the small personal economics. I'd been a chronic grab a 14, avocado toast and latte guy on my way to the office. Now, with my hour of calm at home, I made my own breakfast. Oatmeal with berries, eggs on toast, simple things. I calculated it in April. I was saving $3,012 a year, not by budgeting harder, but by having the time and presence of mind to nourish myself. And the books. On my shelf, there's a row of 17 physical books I've read since January. Not skimmed, not listened to at 2x speed. Read, underlined, lived with. They're not all serious. There's a mystery novel in there, a book about the history of maps. But they represent a recovered part of my mind. The part that can follow a single, complex thread for hours, just for the joy of it. The biggest surprise was the ripple effect. The calm I built in the morning didn't stay in the morning. It leaked into everything. Because I started my day with intention, I began to notice other parts of my life that were on autopilot. The biggest one was my commute. That 45-minute grind on the I-5, twice a day, felt like a soul-sucking tax. One quiet Thursday in April, with my newfound clarity, I drafted a proposal. I showed my boss the data on my focused output, and I pitched a simple idea. What if I worked from home on Wednesdays? That saved commute time could go back into deep work for the company. She agreed to a 3-month trial. It worked so well it became permanent. That freed up Wednesday time. That's when the real magic happened. I didn't fill it with more work. I signed up for a Thursday evening pottery class at the community center in Ballard. My hands, which had been so trained to swipe and tap, learned the slow, grounding feel of wet clay on a spinning wheel. It was humbling and joyful. And in that class, I met Sarah, a graphic designer who was tired of the digital grind, too. We started talking. 6 months later, we're sketching out plans for a weekend pop-up market to sell our crafts. A creative partnership born from time I literally created out of thin air. This is the compound interest of a mindful morning. You don't just get a peaceful hour. You get a life that starts to bend towards your actual interests, one reclaimed minute at a time. But it's not all lilacs and seaplanes. There are new challenges at this level, and nobody talks about them. The first is loneliness. When you change a fundamental rhythm, you step out of sync with the world. My friends would joke, "Here comes the monk," or plan brunches at 11 a.m., knowing I'd been up for 6 hours. I had to learn to hold my peace without becoming smug or isolated. The ritual wasn't a badge of superiority. It was a personal tool. The second challenge is the pressure to monetize or optimize the peace away. Once people saw the change in me, the questions started. You should coach people. Start a podcast. Sell the protocol. The world wants to turn everything into a product. I had to fiercely protect my morning practice from becoming just another item on my productivity to-do list. It had to stay sacred, messy, and mine.
And the third, most subtle danger, becoming judgmental. It's easy to look at someone scrolling frantically at 7 a.m. and feel a pang of pity or superiority. I had to constantly remind myself, that was me 180 days ago. I'm not better. I'm just on a different part of the path. Compassion, not comparison, is the fuel for lasting change. So where do you start? Not here, where I am now. That's like looking at the top of a mountain and feeling overwhelmed. You start where I started on December 3rd with one permission. Your call to action isn't to buy a lockbox or take a cold shower tomorrow. It's this asterisk tonight. Charge your phone outside of your bedroom. Asterisk in the kitchen, on the bathroom counter, in a drawer. Anywhere but next to your bed. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, do not touch a screen until you have done two things: finished one full glass of water, and looked out a window for 60 quiet seconds. That's it. That's your day one. That single action breaks the most toxic chain, the one that connects your first waking consciousness to the digital vortex. If you're willing to take that step, send me a direct message with the word window 60 asterisk. I'll send you the exact 3-minute audio file I use for my first 30 days. It's not a fancy meditation. It has just a gentle voice reminding you to breathe and look out the window while your anxiety screams. Sometimes we all need a temporary friend in the quiet. This journey has taught me that the most valuable real estate in the world isn't in Manhattan or Silicon Valley. It's the space between your first thought and your first reaction. That tiny gap is where your freedom lives. Who owns that space tomorrow? Will it be an algorithm, a notification, someone else's urgency, or will it be you? The neuroscience is clear. It takes about 22 days to rewire a dopamine pathway, to loosen the grip of that addictive pull. But it takes about 66 days to make a new behavior your automatic, effortless default. If you start tonight, you're 1/3 of the way home by Valentine's Day. Imagine that. I'll leave you with two images. The first is from last week. I was in my pottery class, my hands covered in smooth gray clay. I was trying to center a lump on the wheel, which is harder than it looks. I was failing again and again. The clay was wobbling, collapsing. But instead of frustration, I felt a deep, patient curiosity. I took a breath, remembered the feeling of my morning calm, and tried again. My teacher nodded and said, "There, you found your center." The second image is from this morning. As the sun finally broke over the Cascades, I finished my tea. I looked down at the mug in my hands and I saw my reflection in the dark surface of the liquid. It was calm, it was present, it was mine. You have a center too. It's been waiting under all that noise, all that hustle, all that reactive frenzy. Your journey doesn't start with a grand transformation. It starts with a single, quiet decision to look out a window and remember what your own breath sounds like. The rest, the peace, the clarity, the